crowd today, which is super exciting. So thank you, everyone who made it here. There's one more chair right in front of Charlie behind Julian, if someone's looking for a chair. I just want to say a few things because we have such a big crowd. So first of all, we have lots of students and parents here. Make sure you're all on your best behavior, being focused and quiet and not poking your buddies, so that you can really pay attention to all the hard work that you'll see the result of up on the screen. So you guys can see we've already had several presentations. First, you guys are going to hear from Esha, who's speaking about industrial agriculture, and then Kira talking about conventional medicine and some alternatives. Just so you know, because some of you may be imagining yourself in high school pretty soon, in the senior thesis class, we spend the first quarter doing lots of research, organization, and writing a big research paper. And then as they're refining that and revising, they hand that in and then start on a presentation that takes some interesting aspects from their research and also shows you a little bit about a career and their plans for after high school. And all the students choose their own topics based on something they're especially interested in and often related to a career that they're interested in, but not always directly related, okay? So thank you guys all for being here. And Esha, start us off.
Hi guys. I did my senior thesis about industrial agriculture, its practices, effects, and alternatives. I'm not sure if many of you know this, but industrial agriculture is the basis for America's major food system. And it was established just after World War II with the idea of high yields, high profits, and massive technological improvements. It was the moment when farming shifted from a lifestyle to a profession. And what society did not know at the time was the terrible effects that industrial agriculture would have on the health of our bodies and the land. It may produce large amounts of food and exports, but creates large environmental problems. And there are solutions to these environmental problems that we can do. So before the 1800s, agriculture was a way of life. If one needed food, they had to grow it for themselves. It was a practice that some considered a cultural art and could be learned and improved through trial and error. Farmers used animals such as ox, horses, and cows as their machines. And however, today, agriculture has changed to maximizing profitability and production with minimal amounts of labor, which means transitioning to big industry and tractors and stuff like that. And so the USDA was established in 1862, and the first phase of mechanization, tractors, took place between 1820 and 1870, and the second phase between 1920 and 1950. And during World War II, the revolution of chemicalization came about, and we tilled the land constantly and packed it with pesticides and chemicals and fertilizers. And due to these Midwestern farmer practices, it left all the land bare and infertile to wind and soil erosion. And tillage was a huge cause of that, constantly tearing up the dirt and the ground. And this led to the Dust Bowl. And at the end of 1934, 200 million acres of crops were damaged. And because of this, Franklin D. Roosevelt created the Soil Conservation Service to save the United States soil. And he wanted to go with the way of nature. Yet the practice that was a huge contributor to the Dust Bowl, tillage, still continues today. So industrial agriculture may seem a lot more affordable than you think. If you think of the money coming right out of your pocket, it is. But all of the environmental, health, and social costs are not added to the price tag that's coming right out of your wallet. The transportation of the food is very costly in money and environmental health. It burns a lot of fossil fuels and a lot of time. The industrial practices such as pesticides, processing, synthetic fertilizers, packaging quickly starts to add up in cost. And the sad thing is none of this money goes to the farmers. So industrial agriculture's machines, it has created large square fields for farming because it's easier to plow than natural contour landscapes. And these larger fields are more vulnerable to water and wind erosion, hence the Dust Bowl. Heavy machinery and large amounts of tillage is making the Earth's topsoil disappear, which is the nutritious good soil in which our food is grown. And mechanization has led to producing more food per unit of labor, but it has also led to soil erosion and more fossil fuel consumption. And tractors have taken over what animals and livestock used to do. And the animals' natural organic manure, which the plant's natural fertilizer, is no longer supporting the soil system, and it's just being chewed up by tractors. And so we have created chemical fertilizers and toxic pesticides and all this bad stuff. And monoculture is another practice that industrial agriculture does, because industrial agriculture is so obsessed with the concept of high yields and high profit, making as much food as they can for as much money as they can. And yield is the production per unit of a single crop. So as you can see, there's a ton of that specific type of lettuce. And that's a good thing. That's producing a lot of food. But it does destroy our variety of food and the land's biodiversity. And biodiversity, like lots of different plants intermingled together, lots of animals, can create a lot better environmental outcome. Building the land instead of degrading it. And we're losing a lot of portion of our food variety, and it has also caused a loss of natural animal and plant habitat, especially hurting those that are native. Many small animals have fled from industrial agriculture regions because they don't want to live in that kind of thing. So pesticides. Agriculture's use of pesticides is in hopes of solving the pest problem and stopping the pests from killing the plant. Agriculture's practice of this intense use has actually made the pest problem worse because they create something called strong pesticide resistance, which is when the pesticides are so often used that they stop working. And the pests destroy the plants all over again. And the industry's solution to this is to just keep packing plants with pesticides. Another issue with this extreme use of pesticides, and it's a big issue that I only vaguely mention, is that when it rains and it goes into the soils and it runs into the water runoff, it can leave more than 1 million Americans with pesticides leaking into their water. And feedlots is another major industrial practice. And it's more controversial because feedlots produce roughly 26 billion pounds of beef per year, and Americans love beef. And some people believe that feedlots aren't bad for the environment, arguing that 70 to 80% of the cow's life is spent in a pasture and then the last 5 months in a feedlot. But what we're forgetting about here is that the feedlot's still year-round and constantly going, which is bad for the environment. It may, I guess, be better for the cow if it's only lasts 5 months or in the feedlot, but it's still not good. And so I interviewed Dave Brunson, an agriculture policy director of Community Alliance with Family Farms, also known as CAF. And he believes that livestock production is a total disaster and that humans confine animals for cheap food and efficiency, which he believes to be evil and wrong. It takes roughly 1,760 gallons of water to produce each pound of beef, and an estimated 60 trillion gallons of water is used for corn in feedlot production annually. Feedlots use massive amounts of grain and corn for feed, and this isn't even what the cows are supposed to be eating. And if you compare feedlot beef to adaptive grazing grass-fed cattle, the grass-fed reduced carbon emissions by 170%, and the feedlots increased net carbon emissions. So the solution should not be to ditch meat, but it would be to change the way that we raise the meat, which I think is an often concept that's confused. And something that I think is really overlooked in agriculture is the farmers, the actual people that are growing the food. And because of industrialization in agriculture, farmers changed and became more competitive. And part of the reason that farming is so expensive is farmers have to purchase mechanized items and expensive fertilizers and pesticides. And when industries come into small farming regions or like rural farming communities, they enclose land, and they enclose this land to use it only for industrial agriculture. And they're taking huge parts of land away from these farmers so they can't grow their own food anymore because they want to produce high export luxury goods or like a bunch of export foods to make a bunch of money. And so this is where hunger can stem from. Like, hunger comes from food dependent, being on dependent of getting your food at the grocery store. And because we have to purchase food in order to get it, and food can be super expensive, industry has stolen our ability to produce our own food because there's not enough land. So this enclosing of land, as big industrial farms grow, poverty can also grow. So now I'm jumping into some of the effects. So, for example, effects like mechanization creates erosion, energy dependency, capital expensive, inorganic nitrogenous fertilizers, all the toxic fertilizers, or like synthetic fertilizers more like, groundwater contamination, pest erosion, energy dependency again, pesticides, new pests, resistant pests, water pollution, human poisoning, which I'll talk about shortly. Well, I'll actually talk about it right now. So industrial farmers are 6 times more likely to get cancer due to the fact that they're exposed to neurotic compounds and organic phosphate insecticides, which can cause permanent long-term damage to the brain and the nervous and reproductive systems. So it's not good for these farmers to be constantly using pesticides. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that 300,000 farmers suffer from acute pesticide poisoning each year. And although these statistics may seem drastic, I want you to take in consideration that in the 1970s and 1990s, when foodborne illnesses arose, industrial agriculture was also expanding to become the only source of food. And not only have pesticides negatively affected people, but also animals in the land. The use of chemicals that are poisonous have created irreversible soil loss and reduced the quality of soil and water, as well as introduced non-native species that grow rampant and choke out all indigenous species. So the industry also does a practice where it packs animals with antibiotics and hormones for the growth and resistance. And when we consume these antibiotics, it can create antibiotic resistance within us humans. And that is the 11th leading cause of death in the US. Another serious issue. So agriculture's relationship with climate change. We've set up a system of agriculture that assumed the climate and land would stay the same, that we would never run out of water or fertile soil. Yet when we continue to clear our forests for livestock or drain our water for supply, we are only going to continue making the situation worse. What is key to understand is that although agriculture may be a huge problem to climate change, it can also be a huge part of the solution to this pollution. So I have a video here, and I just want to, before I start it, the CO2 in this video, all the red that's in this video is represented as CO2, and I believe he explains that. Let's see. As it goes. Come on, video. Of course, it's gonna load like this. It's annoying. Let's see. Sorry, this is annoying. Maybe if I go back.
She might be able to search it up on another tab, I think.
No, because this video is specially from. Now it's totally gone.
You have a file on your computer?
That you emailed me?
I think that will take too long. Why don't you move on and then
Okay.
go back to that?
That is a really good video, though. I suggest, it's from a documentary called Kiss the Ground, which I highly suggest you watch. Go to the next one. None of my pictures are loading either. That's frustrating.
Let's just see if he's switched to the library really quickly.
No, I'm still on ESUSD. That's weird. I wish
Can
I could
you check and
reload.
see if your internet is up? Or just check right here.
What if I just reload it?
You can try that.
And then, oh, but sorry guys. this isn't how I want it to be.
Your computer's crashing right now.
It is crashing. Sorry. Okay, now I have to find where I was again. If I go to present, will it screw it up?
I think you can just click on it and it should be okay. Go here. So don't do right there, do it the side. Yeah, and then.
But I won't.
Now drag that over again.
Okay, should we try the video again?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna try the video again because it might work now. Please work.
Just give it a minute.
One thing I can say is all the seniors practice giving their presentations many times, and one of the things they always check is to make sure that their videos work, because a real life experience is for people who present
we
a
just won't
lot
do that.
is sometimes your technology fails you when you're in front of a lot of people, and you have to be able to adapt, even though it can be frustrating.
It's
So I think
okay.
keep going with
Yeah.
your presentation, and we'll see if we can go at the very end.
Okay, so we'll skip that really good video. But so agriculture's relationship with climate change continuing. So that last video talked about how sequestering carbon has everything to do with good soil, and that we must build healthy soil to sequester as much carbon as we can and to create true soil health. And we have forgotten that carbon is all part of the system. It's not something that is bad, it's a part of the environment, and it's good for the soil and the planet. And and the plants, because carbon helps feed them. And we need to let it help support the system and not let it take over, which is happening right now. Paul Hawken has created Project Drawdown. He put together a team of 70 scientists from 22 countries that analyzed data to find the most effective way to reduce greenhouse gases and put carbon back into the soil. And food-related solutions collectively were the #1 solution to slow this global warming. And so with all of these issues in health and climate arising in part because of agriculture, we see the importance of moving to better farming systems that rebuild the land instead of destroying it. A system of farming involving reducing or eliminating tillage, cover cropping fields, which means having plants covering the ground all throughout the year so it never leaves the ground bare. And to increase the fertility instead of spraying fertilizer, so integrating trees and animals back into the system. We must try to learn from the land and how it naturally works and how we can support those natural aspects, not go against them, which is what we've been doing. Some call it sustainable agriculture. There's also regenerative agriculture, alternative farming. And the alternatives in small sustainable agriculture are things like bringing organic manures back into the system to build soil health and prevent erosion. So that's like bringing the cattle back immersed with the whole system to naturally fertilize. And also to diversify farms, to create habitats for wildlife and rebuild biodiversity and build natural resources. A practice of farming with the idea to be as sustainable as possible, knowing that we don't have an endless amount of water. And to prevent water runoff by building up the soil and making it hold moisture, and to also have the ground constantly covered with plants. And so organic is actually quite different from regenerative or sustainable. It was bought by the government years ago with the intent of not using any synthetic inputs. It's very limited and has no restrictions towards climate and labor. The biggest intent is to stop fertilizers and pesticides and to get chemicals out of our food, which is all really good. And we see organics in our stores today, and they're good. It's just not quite based around the concept of rebuilding the land and the soil health, which is a key difference in regenerative agriculture. So alternative grazing, like I said, feedlots, a big controversial topic. How could we produce that much meat but in a better way? So it's all about how both the plants, animals, and the land work together. Overgrazing isn't tied to the number of animals that are out in the field. It's tied to how much time they spend in that field. If you graze them correctly, there are ways where you can build the soil while feeding the animals and creating better soil health at the same time. This is called holistic management or adaptive multi-paddock grazing or rotate grazing. You rotate livestock around multiple different paddocks, avoiding overgrazing while they're using their organic manure to help fertilize the soil and also eating at the same time. Who knows if this video will work? We'll try. it's a video of basically an above view of a field, and they have a fence and cattle, and it shows how the farmers open the gates and the cattle go into the new field, the field that hasn't been eaten yet, and then the past field has been eaten by them, and all their manure and natural fertilizers are in that field. And so they shift them to the next field, not allowing them to go to the other one, so that the other field can grow back up again. So we're like keeping the system in circulation, and it also mimics, this isn't gonna work, but, so it also mimics natural, what was I trying to say? It mimics the natural aspect of like predators and prey, of like running them out to different places in the land. Now my pictures aren't showing up again, but oh well. So there we go. So can we live off of small sustainable local farms? So some argue that small local sustainable farms will not produce enough food, but this isn't necessarily true. If society looks at it as producing as high amount of yield like industrial agriculture, then it's much lower because they don't practice monoculture with like acres and acres of the same type of crop. But this is because small regenerative farms have a dense amount of many different foods. They don't and so they are packing as many different types of food in a certain area as they can. And they're even having plants that can help other plants grow. It's actually pretty cool. And so yeah, that's all I had to say there. So small agriculture in the government. 20 years ago, government support for small farms was basically unheard of. But we're making progress in that department. And hopefully soon many more small local farms will be supported to the point where we can grow food to help our bodies and help the land. And so my conclusion is that I believe we as Americans need to seriously take in consideration the production of our food and its effect on us as well as the planet. In order to save our health and the planet's, I believe we need to look at much more alternative farming practices and step away from industrial agriculture and realize how the importance of agriculture, one of the leading causes of climate change and health issues, is one of the only solutions to help fight these two situations. And I wish for Americans to understand that it's not the cows, nor the farmers, or the ordinary people that are the issue. It's the industry and the policies and practices that they have implemented that have done our health and planet wrong. So my 4-year plan, I've applied to these 4 universities, and with the intent of majoring in environmental science or environmental education. Also thinking about studying regenerative agriculture. If I were to go in the field of environmental science and education, I would give talks to schools and some other groups about nature and environmental issues. Some are employed by nature reserves, where they lead outdoor walks and answer questions. Some also teach through immersion during field trips, and some of these immersion programs are designed for inner city kids. My goal is basically to hike with teenagers and kids and teach them about the environment and just be outdoors with them, especially kids who haven't grown up in places like this, because I think it's really special. The median salary for this job is $42,000 as of May 2020, so not too good, but you know, it's okay. And these are my works cited. And thanks for watching. Sorry the videos didn't work. So if you have any questions, you can ask questions.
We have time for 2 questions just because we got a little bit behind.
Yes. If anyone has questions, you don't need to, because Kara can go. Barbara.
Where in the United States right now, where is this regenerative agriculture being practiced already?
Well, that's kind of a hard question because it's in a lot of different places all over America on a small, generally relatively small scale. But Dave Brunson, which I didn't quite realize how much the push for small farms in California was until I interviewed him, that he's actually part of like the front lines of getting as many small farms in California as we can. So I thought that was, I didn't know nearly how much support there was for small farms in just California. But kind of everywhere, like, but not, I mean, not everywhere, but just kind of all over the place, I guess.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
How quick would the turnaround be if
industrial to the small farm?
It would be probably not that fast because industrial agriculture has been a huge farming system for a long time. And so it'd be really slow to try to convince everyone that even this is the right way, because that's hard to do. And Kissing the Ground, which a documentary I again recommend, talks about how it is hard to educate the farmers and convince them to switch to these kind of things, because it's a big change. Okay, so I guess.
All right, thank you.
The other one was too hard to describe.
Yeah.
Because it was
I know. Okay. So give it a minute so we can find you. Do you want to check and see if you're here for you? Or do you want to just go for it?
I'm just gonna go for it.
Okay. So remember, you gotta click the side there. Okay, now drag this just a part. There you go.
All right, so we don't waste any time. Our next presenter is Kira.
All right, so this is some issues with conventional medicine and an alternative approach to our own health. So conventional, also known as allopathic medicine, is by far the most well-known and relied upon form of medicine in America, which means that medications are what we rely on when something's wrong with our health, whether that's like a cold or emotional, mental pain, or like just skin concerns like acne, anything. We put everything on conventional medicine. And the pills that we take for a lot of these illnesses can be really good, but they can also have some serious drawbacks. And they're presented as the easiest option, but we're left to deal with the drawbacks of these. But medications aren't the only option for health. Changes in our own lifestyle, both mentally and nutritionally, are explored in alternative medicine, which seeks to combat symptoms, not to combat symptoms, but to solve the root cause of an issue. So this is an advertisement for conventional medicine, and we'll see if it works, but probably all of you guys have seen an ad like this before, and this might be what you think of when you think of medicine. Oh my gosh.
6 weeks, your front, it follows you wherever you go. It's a cloud of depression. And although you've been on an antidepressant for at least 6 weeks, you're frustrated that your depressive symptoms are still with you. Seroquel XR, when added to an antidepressant, is approved for the treatment of major depressive disorder. For many, taking Seroquel XR with an antidepressant was proven more effective for treating unresolved symptoms of depression than an antidepressant alone. Call your doctor if you have unusual changes in mood, behavior, or thoughts of suicide. Antidepressants can increase these in children, teens, and young adults. Elderly dementia patients taking Seroquel XR have an increased risk of death. Call your doctor if you have fever, stiff muscles, and confusion, as these may be signs of a life-threatening reaction. Or if you have uncontrollable muscle movements, as these could become permanent. High blood sugar has been reported with Seroquel XR and medicines like it, and in extreme cases can lead to coma or death. Your doctor should check for cataracts. Other risks include decreases in white blood cells, which can be fatal, seizures, increased cholesterol, weight gain, dizziness on standing, drowsiness, impaired judgment, and trouble swallowing. Use caution before driving or operating machinery. For more help putting distance between you and your depression, ask your doctor about adding Seroquel XR today. Learn more at seroquelxr.com. If you can't afford your medication, AstraZeneca may be able to help.
Right. So this might help you or it might kill you. That's kind of the risk you're taking. There. Okay. So now this is alternative medicine as explained by an alternative medicine doctor who's a local in Mammoth.
The other side is alternative. So under alternative, there's integrative, there's holistic, there's functional medicine, and they're all similar in that they're doing something that is not regular medicine. So all of those try to look at the body as a whole and add other things like massage, acupuncture. We do more with how your body functions and the supplements and the lifestyle changes.
Okay, so that is kind of functional medicine. A little more on her. Her name is Dr. Kim Escudero, and she used to work in conventional medicine in Mammoth, but after she had a medical crisis of her own, she really wanted to find the root cause of that issue, and she couldn't find that in conventional medicine. So she learned all about functional medicine, and now she is helping people in the local area to treat their bodies with functional or alternative medicine. So my story, like this might seem a totally random topic, but last April, I was at home sick for 2 weeks and it was this super trippy sickness. Like I could not figure out what was wrong. And then we went to the hospital and basically it ended with the doctor telling me I could die in 24 hours. Not a fun thing to hear. So I got life flighted to UC Davis and I was there for 6 days. I didn't go outside or even leave like the floor I was on. Turns out I had an allergic reaction to an antibiotic I was taking for acne that was prescribed to me. I finally got to leave the hospital after those 6 days. Yay. But these are just some of the medications that they gave me when I left, even though the reason I got sent there was a medication. So at one point I was taking 9 pills every day to make sure that I didn't get sick again. And one of the medications, the main one I had to take, was a steroid called prednisone, and I was taking 60 milligrams a day. And what I found out while I was researching for this is that in the case of prednisone, the risk of psychosis appears to increase significantly once a dose of 30 to 40 milligrams is reached. And I was on 60, so double that. And I didn't know what psychosis means, you might not either, but it's when a person becomes so mentally, it's a mental disorder where emotions are so impaired that you lose contact with reality. And that is pretty terrifying. And that's not, these big risks, almost dying of an antibiotic and then almost potentially losing my mind from a steroid, that's not a risk I want to take. So I'm going to talk about some big issues with conventional medicine. But before I do that, I want to tell you that, it can be really good. I think we all know someone whose life has been saved by conventional medicine. Mine is included in that. And alternative medicine cannot fix a broken bone by drinking more milk or whatever. So conventional medicine has its place, but here are some issues with it. So advertising, right? We're used to it. And in 1997, the FDA dropped restrictions on direct-to-consumer prescription drug advertising, and that made America one of the few countries that allows this. And then Cerebral, which is an online pharmacy, spent $13 million on advertising on TikTok. So I don't know if you have that, but on your social media, you're seeing advertisements for medications, which is... it is what it is. But in Canada, it's illegal to advertise any medications, right? So this is an old advertisement from 1885 for cocaine, which was used medicinally for toothache. And that seems mind-blowing if you know what cocaine is, which you probably do. But in Canada, they would not be allowed to advertise Advil. So those seem like two vastly different things, but there is a reason why they are not allowing any advertisement. Right, so in America, the number of people visiting doctors to get a medication has increased vastly from 1993, when it was 200,000 people visiting, to 1.2 million visitors trying to get a medication from a doctor. And 1 in 5 adults takes at least one psychotropic medication each day. So what I was trying to get to with advertising is that Americans are 2 times as likely as Canadians to request a medication, and you can trace that back to advertising. It's not that Americans are necessarily sicker than Canadians or suffering with more illnesses. It's that we're seeing, oh, this is a medication, and maybe it could help me, but maybe it couldn't, and maybe it's for an issue that I don't even have. And then there's the matter of revenue, or how much money medicine companies are making. So in 2020, Pfizer, you might have heard of it, made an annual revenue of $41.9 billion, and that is a huge amount of money. And then in the same year, Johnson & Johnson made $82.6 billion in revenue. So that is a lot of money, and at some point, the idea of protecting people's health gets a little bit drowned in the prospect of making a lot of money. And the way to make more money is to advertise more and to entice people to get medications, sort of whether they direly need them or not. So I think one of the biggest issues with conventional medicine is that it treats symptoms, okay? And so this alternative medicine doctor, Dr. Kelly Brogan, describes conventional medicine this way. If you have a piece of glass in your foot, are you going to take an ibuprofen or a Tylenol for it? Or do you want to just take the glass out? And the definition of allopathic or conventional medicine is a system in which medical doctors and other healthcare professionals treat symptoms and diseases using drugs, radiation, or surgery. But there is an alternative, which really works. I've been working on alternative medicine in my life, and it works. And it views the body as a connected whole, which to me makes sense. Our bodies are connected. But conventional medicine is different because it sees the issue and it doesn't see what else within your body is causing that issue. So the Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary defines alternative medicine as a theory that the universe, and especially all living nature, is correctly seen in terms of interacting wholes. Your body's working together to heal itself or to make itself sicker, depending on how you're taking care of it. So alternative medicine has been around for a really, really long time. So why don't we know about it more? Well, now we're learning about it. And the ancient Greeks used holistic or alternative medicine, and they considered diseases to be caused naturally, and so they healed your body also naturally. Symptoms were indicating the status of the entire person instead of just an outside issue. Okay, so all of that might have seemed just super out there, weird stuff that doesn't make sense, but you can bring alternative medicine into your own life. So these are 2 issues with which teenagers struggle. I've struggled with both of them, anxiety and acne. 31.9% of teenagers suffer with some sort of anxiety disorder, and more than 85% of teenagers have acne. And neither of these things are fun things, and I think we all want to get rid of them. So, conventional medicine treats anxiety with medications, including Zoloft, Vivactyl, Xanax, Valium, and a ton of others, which you can't even list, and they have these confusing long names. But they come with side effects, like I already mentioned. So taking these anxiety medications can lead to cardiac abnormalities, your heart doesn't work right, cognitive blunting, your brain doesn't work right, suicidality, which is terrifying, and addiction leading to overdose. If you heard Charles's, you know about that. So that's the conventional approach. But what you can do is practice mindfulness. And maybe that sounds like hippy-dippy nonsense. It's not. It was developed by John Kabat-Zinn, who is a professor at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. It's called MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. So what it means is just paying attention to how you're feeling in the moment without judging how you're feeling. If somebody says something to you and you start panicking, don't tell yourself that you're weird for feeling that. Just accept that it's okay to feel that way. And slowly, the more you pay attention to how you feel, the more you can understand how to change how you feel. And then there's acne. So earlier in my story, I told you about how I took a ton of pills for it. And so this is the official way they treat it. First, you're given creams, and then you can be given like first-line antibiotics, which are supposed to be easier on you. And then you can be given more strong antibiotics and pills. So creams can make your face look like that. Like, it can be pretty painful. But maybe it's getting rid of acne. And then with the medications, these are two that I took, and they can lead you to an allergic reaction, which could kill you. And they can also leave you with anxiety, depression, irritability, impulsiveness, and psychosis. And then if those lower medications don't work, they can prescribe Accutane, which for some people works really well. But it's also pretty scary, and there's like super long lists that you have to sign when you take that. Like, if a woman were to become pregnant while taking that, her child would have birth defects. Like, this stuff is serious and kind of dangerous. So the alternative approach, which requires just changing the way you eat, comes with a lot less side effects. And so Sean Stevenson taught me, not in person, through his books and all that, about changing your diet. And he is the host of the #1 most popular health podcast in the US. And what he says is, we literally are what we eat. If you don't remember anything else, remember that we are what we eat. Okay? And so you might still think like diet is just a weird thing to do, or maybe that only a certain type of people diet. But Sean Stevenson proves that anybody can change their life by changing the way they eat. He grew up in Missouri, biracial, raised by his grandparents. He loved fast food. Like, that was his favorite thing. And he was a really good athlete through high school until he was running a race, and all of a sudden, at age 15, his hip gave out. That's something that will happen to, like, your 90-year-old grandpa, not a 15-year-old kid. And the doctors told him that he was never going to recover, and there was nothing they could do. And so into college, he was done with athletics. He couldn't do any sports, and his mental health deteriorated. He got really depressed. He just figured, okay, I guess I'm done. And then at some point, he had just this stroke of brilliance. What if I change the way I eat? And he actually turned his life around. This is him now, super healthy, and writing books and telling people about how to change their life. So bringing this in, what I did, because I learned from him, is I cut out milk from my diet. And the reason he recommends that is because milk is packed full of hormones, and hormones are what cause acne. Your body naturally has them, but when you add all these new hormones from a cow, it just makes your body kind of do weird things, and It makes your body unhappy, and that can be shown in acne. But maybe for a lot of us, milk is a huge part of your diet, cereal at breakfast, or if you like coffee in your coffee. I don't know. We eat a lot of milk, but there are other options. So there's a ton of alternative milk, not just oat milk. And like I'm just showing black coffee, but you know, just there's so many ways you can cut milk out of your life. And it's not something weird to do, not just some silly California girl thing to drink oat milk lattes. It can be really good for you. And so that was me on June 10th, 2022. That was me this November. I cut milk out of my diet. I tried to cut out a lot of sugar and a lot of gluten, and it worked, okay? So if you're struggling with acne and you want to get rid of it, just change the way you eat. Just try it. In conclusion, your health is in your hands. You can change the way you feel, the way you think, and the way you look by changing how you talk to yourself, how you judge yourself, and how you feed yourself, okay? So if you remember nothing else, we literally are what we eat. Okay, my career, I want to be a psychologist. They get paid a lot of money. I'm going to have to, sometimes, depending on where you work, how you work, but it could be like 100,000, maybe. Basically, what you do is you talk to people about how they're feeling, and that's super interesting to me. I applied to one of these colleges. I might apply to the rest, but I want to take a gap year and ski and work at June Mountain in the La-di-da. These are my sources.
Thank you, Kira. That was a really interesting presentation. I think we need to let some people go who have places to get to on time, but if a few people want to remain to ask Kira some questions,
Yeah, Emma?
we can do 2 more minutes.
We're gonna let the students who have to get to class go, because we don't have a class to rush to.
Shoot, Emma.
You guys can go quietly, that'd be great.
What? He fixed it after he changed his diet. That was a good question. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else have questions?